Okay, so figure 7.1, no, is just a sort of a summary on how does a service concern or a service operations is being whose income statement is prepared, no, how it is prepared. So you have there the statement of income for a service concern or service type of business. You have revenues, no, from services, or the income from services minus operating expenses is equals to profit automatically. But when we discuss about merchandising or the trading operations, we simply have to arrive at the net sales. But the net sales, of course, class requires first gross sales less sales returns and allowances, sales discounts before we arrive at net sales. So mas taas-taas, no? Na mas taas-taas ang proseso how to prepare the statement of income for merchandising compared to the service. Now, we have already discussed about the cost of sales. Remember, the cost of sales is equals to atong kantidad sa ato tagpalit ng goods na ato ipantinda plus all cost incidental to purchase of those goods that we are going to sell. Those are what we call cost of sales. Then less, no, less gross profit. I mean, it's equal. The difference is equals to gross profit. And then again, from the gross profit, we deduct the operating expenses. These expenses are just like the expenses in the service concern, no? So the same level sila, no, straight ra an representation, because whatever expenses that are classified in the service concern would also be the same in the merchandising. But of course, there will be added, no, other costs or other expenses that can be classified as operating expenses and under merchandising. And then equals to the difference between the gross profit and the operating expenses or other income is equals to profit or the gross or net income. So in the merchandising business, that sales arise. So this is important, no? Dili ra ba dyan lamang net sales siya, because we still have the values. When we say about net sales, it means it is the difference between sales here, no? It is the difference between sales and the deducting from sales, the gross sales, the sales discount, and the sales returns and allowances. But all these new terms, no, that we are going to encounter in Module 5 will be discussed in a later part of this module. Okay. So you have there an example again. Now, this is an example of a statement of income of a merchandising business. So you have net sales less cost of sales is equals to gross profit. Operating expenses less the difference is what we call operating profit less finance cost. When we say finance cost, these are the utangs, the utang, no, the interest expense or other cost incidental to na mga loans, no, loans that are secured by the business. So amo dyan mga finance cost. But of course, the loan should really be used for the operations, that it can be classified as interest expense or the finance cost. So now the operating cycle of a merchandising business, kung cash basis plus, no, dali ra, because from cash, then whatever cash that you have, you're going to buy goods, no, or this is what we call, you purchase the goods to be sold, and then it becomes your inventory, no, available for sale, and then once it is sold, then you will receive cash, no. Once it is sold and you receive cash, no, right away from the sale transaction, then it is cash sales. So this is the operating cycle for a cash sales or sales that are in cash basis. But we also have a operating cycle for a merchandising, business. You have here, kung tag-utang, no? Of course, when we say sales on account, meaning to say, nahalin, ang halin tag-utang, no? Tag-utang kibali, ang imo goods. Okay, so from cash, now of course, these are again, we said, we buy goods, no? We buy those goods, atong purchases kanina. Okay, and then those goods are placed in inventory or are available for sale. And then when it is sold, but of course, tag-utang on credit or on account, then it becomes an accounts receivable account, which is a current asset account, no? And then from there, if it could be collected, then it would convert to cash. So cycle, because from cash, magpalit ng goods, that becomes inventory, then kung utangon ato nimo tagbaligya, then it passes the accounts receivable, then there is a remedy to collect, no? Or to exhaust the collection of this accounts receivable so that it can be easily converted into cash in a short period of time. Okay, so source documents, this has been already discussed in module 3, lesson 1. I even have examples, with you in that module. So I will just skip this one. And then let's take up now the purchase transactions. Let's step in the purchase transaction. So when a purchase or sale of merchandise occurs, the buyer and the seller should agree on the price of the merchandise, the payment terms, and the party to shoulder the transportation cost. Owners of small merchandising firms may settle these terms informally by phone or by discussion with the vendor's representative. Most large businesses, however, follow certain procedures when purchasing merchandise. So the procedures, now these are, of course, the suggestive or the standard procedures when businesses, large businesses, purchase goods. When certain items are needed, the user department fills in a purchase requisition and then sends it to the purchasing department. The purchasing department that prepares a purchase order forms. These are actually forms. After checking with the price list, quotations, or catalogs of approved vendors. Of course, there were quotations earlier, before we prepare these purchase orders. The purchase order addressed to the selected vendor indicates the quantity, description, and price of the merchandise ordered. It also indicates expected payment terms and transportation arrangement. Kung jay ba siya utang, kung utangon si siya, how much, or is it on a cash basis when it collects, for example, if the supplier collects from the business, would it be given on cash basis or automatic, pwede ra makolekta dayon si supplier? But if it is on account or tag-utang or on credit, it passes to a credit period. Kung how long would be the credit, allowable credit period for such sale, by the supplier before it can be charged with penalty for late payment. So after receiving the purchase order, the seller forwards an invoice to the purchaser upon shipment of the merchandise. The invoice called a sales invoice by a seller and a purchase invoice by the buyer defines the terms of the transactions. Then upon receiving the shipment of merchandise, the purchaser's receiving department sees to it that the terms in the purchase order are complied with and prepares a receiving report. Before approving the invoice for payment, the accounts payable department compares copies of the purchase requisition, purchase order, receiving report, and invoice to ensure that quantities, descriptions, and prices agree. All the above forms, purchase requisition, purchase order, invoice, sales invoice, and receiving report are source documents. When they are goods, when the goods are received or when title has passed, the entity should record purchases and a liability or a cash disbursement or a cash disbursement. Generally, the seller recognizes the sales transaction in the records when the goods have been shipped. No? Kasagaran, they will recognize the obligation, the start of the obligation when the goods are already shipped and received by the buyer. No? Okay, so terms of transaction. So these are now the one that I've said that when the goods are ordered from Manila, no, and before it reaches the buyer from the supplier, these are the terms. No? Of course, these are agreed terms between the buyer and the seller. So terms of transactions. Merchandise may be purchased and sold either on credit terms or for cash on delivery. So when goods are sold on account, atun utang, no? A period of time called the credit period is allowed for payment. So amo taglaong na kun utang, dili mo sa pwede mo lang nahuyatan na kan si buyer kung kano sa sidya mo bayad sa utang. So there should always be a standard, no? Depending on the policy of the supplier of your goods that you are buying from, no? And then the length of the credit period varies across industries, no? Because depending on the capacity, no, or the availability of cash of a supplier, kung liquid siya, then they can just go beyond 30 days credit or a shorter kung kinahanglanon ko dyan nila ng cash on a shorter period, then dapat the credit period should be less than 30 days. Or it could also be on 10 days. No, it depends. No, it depends. And then the credit period again varies across industries and maybe even vary within the entity. So from the entity itself, no, depending on the product. So maglain-lain ko, for example, ambot ipasabot depending on the product, kung ini siya arang kapaspas na produkto, so kibali an infuse of inventory is also fast, then dapat cash is also available at any time. There will be purchase of goods, no, that are fast moving or dali ra turnover, fast and turnover. So but for those goods na longer an ija turnover or dili ka radyo halino, then you could go a credit period more than the one that is seller. Now, I mean that is a best seller in your store. So when goods are sold on credit, both parties should have understanding as to the amount and the time of payment. These terms, no, especially if they will be giving discounts, no, are usually printed on the sales invoice and constitute part of the sales agreement. If the credit period is 30 days, kung ang utang kuno is good o bayaran within 30 days, then payment is expected within 30 days from the invoice date. Take note, no, that the basis of the 30 days starts on the invoice date. The credit period is usually described as the net credit period or net terms. The credit period for 30 days is noted as a net 30, no? Net 30, or what it was about if it is pay if net 30 or N30, you know, it is shown as N30, what it was about, it is payable or the credit period is 30 days. If the invoice is due 10 days after the end of the month, it may be marked or net 10, no, EOM. Kung what it was about, the invoice is due 10 days after the end of the month. No? For example, so if the credit terms is 210 net 30, so if for example, how do we read? No, how do we understand the credit term that no 210 net 30? So the 2 here is this is the credit term. The 2 is the discount rate. Aton kung pilay discount if you pay your account within the discount period. To both kibali to encourage buyer, no, to pay their account within the discount period. Kung sa muhatag sila non-discount rate. But kung bayaran sa garon, gusto nila pagbayad nila utang within the 30 days, wala penalty, pero wala sa discount, no? Kung beyond than 10 days. Okay, so just to encourage, the purpose really of the discount, no, is to encourage the buyer to pay their accounts earlier. Siguro para magkinahanglan sila gadyo ng cash. But then the credit period, remember, goes beyond within 30 days. So kung within 30 days ka magbayad, beyond ka, for example, on the 11th day from the invoice date ko nagbayad, so wala na discount because the 2% discount is only good for 10 days from the invoice date to the 10th day from the invoice date. So kung magbayad ka on the 11th day from the invoice date, wala na discount. But wala is a penalty because it is still within the 30 days period from the invoice date. Okay? So the credit period is 30 days. The 2 there and the credit term is the discount rate. Ang percentage equivalent ng discount. And the 10-year over 10 is 10 days, meaning that is the discount period that you will be enjoying the 2% discount. Again, if you pay your account, even though 2% on within 10 days, if it goes beyond the 10th day from the invoice date, then you will no longer enjoy the 2% discount. Okay. The credit term is the term that indicates when payment is due for sales that are made on credit, possible discounts, and any applicable interest or late payment fees. So buti po sa bot manggod class, when you pay beyond your when you pay your account beyond the credit period of 30 days, there might be an imposed penalties. Of course, no, also na kumananjoy ni penalties if you don't pay your account within the discount period or the credit period. Discount rate is the rate given by the seller to buyers to encourage them to pay their account promptly, no? Para mubayad sila ng ilang utang within pamabot ng 30 days or within the discount period. Sayang manggod if you're talking about millions, if your purchases amounts to millions of pesos, 2% of a 1 million is already big, no? Kunato no now. Then the discount period is the length of time that the discount rate can be enjoyed by the buyer. The credit period is the length of time the account should be paid by the buyer with no penalties charged to the account. Beyond this period, there will be interest and penalties to be charged to the buyer. Cash discount. So atun sa discount rate we're talking about here, atun sa 2%, that is what we call the cash discount. Some businesses give discounts for prompt payment called cash discounts. If a trade discount is also offered, cash discount is computed on the net amount after the trade discount. What is a trade discount actually, class? Trade discounts are trade discounts when suppliers going to furnish smaller wholesalers or retailers with price lists and catalog showing suggested retail prices of their products. These firms, however, also include a schedule of trade discounts from the listed prices to enable the customer to determine the invoice price to be paid. Trade discounts, the purpose of the trade discount is to encourage the buyer to purchase products because of the markdown from the list price. Okay, bali, sige, nag-sale kami, itong mga markdown class is what we call trade discounts. The trade discount should not be confused with cash discount. This type of discount enables the suppliers to vary prices periodically without the inconvenience of revising price lists and catalogs. Okay. There's no trade discount and there is no special accounting entry for this discount. Kung sabot inin, kung ang trade discount is given class, kung ang presyo, ini diri class, ini an example ng trade discount. When the list price, usually the price that is still the basis of the trade discount is what we call list price. So it's not the invoice price, which is issued with receipt. No? So list price, less 20% trade discount. Usually a trade discount class is big amount, big rate of discount, no? Basta lamang to encourage sales, volume sales. then trade discount, then that is now what we call the invoice price. Amo na dyan resibuhan, ang 14,000. That is your liability. If this is on credit, then your liability is not the 17,500, but only the 14,000. Always take note that trade discount is always deducted first from the list price before an invoice price is determined. So ana siya, no? There is no trade discount and no special accounting entry for this discount. Instead, all accounting entries are based on the invoice price, which is obtained by subtracting the trade discount from the list price. Okay, so that is the illustration, no? Trade discount will be stated in a series. Pwede ganun siya mula na 20%, 30%, or 5%, no? Pwede. So the example of the series of the trade discount, so Anisa, no? 17,500 less 20% because it is first mentioned, and the 10% discount is second to the 20%. That's why before arriving at the invoice price, we deduct all the discount rates from the list price. Okay, so here are examples no, actually of how no problems no involving cash discounts and trade discounts. For example, on June 1, Elena Buray Jr. Forest Products sold merchandise with a 120,000 list price. So on June 1, take note that the invoice date is June 1 or the transaction date is June 1. No? Okay, then the trade discount are, no, letter C where trade discount, and the credit terms are as mentioned here, and the date paid, no, the date that the these transactions A up to E are paid, no. So we have here the solution. For letter A, the list price, no, is general to all letters A to E, so 120,000. And then the discount is 30%. So less 120,000 less 30% of 120,000 is 36,000. Then the sales price is still 84,000. No, that's already the invoice price, no? But then net payment, kung tagbayaran na dyan ng cash, amo dyan automatic the invoice price is already the net of the cash discount. But kung nag-agi pa ng utang, dapat the invoice price would be sales price, no, equivalent to the sales price kung credit, because the discount plus discount will only be computed after on the date that they are going to pay the account, no. So now man nag-enjoy pa man because from June 1 to June 8, that is only 7 days. So buti pa sabot within the discount period of 10 days. Di ba? The discount period for letter A is 10 days. Next, for B, the discount is 40%. So we deduct 40% from list price. And then, is there discount given? No. Why? Because they paid the account beyond the 10-day period, the discount period. June 15 na, that is already 14 days from June 1. So buti pa sabot, beyond na, so wala na cash discount. Okay, for letter C, no trade discounts, automatic, that is invoice price, no? But then if there's a cash discount, ay 10 man, no? June 11 man nagbayad, it is still within, that is the 10 days because we exclude the first, we include the last, no? So accounting parlance class, the definition or the identification of when is the due date would be, if we exclude the first, we include the last. So June 11 is the 10th day. So within the discount period pa. That's why jay hapon cash discount na 2,400. Next for letter D, 20% anija trade discount. So it'll deduct and then the invoice. And the cash discount is the credit discount period is 15 days. So June 14 pa, that is only 13th day, 13 days pa from the invoice date. So nag-enjoy si Janan cash discount. And letter E, since there is no the credit term, there is no discount given, no? So automatic diretso list price minus discount, trade discount is equals to the invoice price. So ana siya, no? Transportation cost. Actually, class, lisod gani si Jain in a topic when it is on a face-to-face discussion, how much more na online or video lang ako presentation. Okay. Transportation cost. This determines kung sino dapat magbayad. For example, if the goods are ordered in Manila, order siya sa Manila. Sino may ba dapat magbayad ng transportation cost na natong order ng goods? Kung FOB class, in general class, kung FOB shipping point, I mean, to determine who will pay for the transportation cost is magdepende kung whatever is the FOB, no? The shipping terms. Kung FOB or that is free on board shipping point, the ownership is already transferred from the shipping point pato sa barko, kung sa eroplano pa sa Manila, the moment that the supplier already taghatag na dito na sa courier company kung sino may mag-deliver, no, na ila taghar, automatic if it was already given to them or tagkuha na natong shipping company, so whoever, courier company, automatic kung FOB shipping point, the ownership is already transferred to the buyer. Take note, class, if it is FOB shipping point and transportation term, dapat the ownership is already transferred to the buyer. So whatever happens to the goods that is in transit, atong goods na tag-deliver, kung na-crash ang plane, for example, kung plane, or for example, kung barko, nalunod ang barko, or kung nagkonsakyanan, nagguba, na-crash ang sakyanan, no, kung travel ra by land. So whatever happens to that goods, waya nilabot si supplier. Pero kung FOB destination class, the ownership is only transferred to the buyer if the goods are already received physically by the buyer, no? So the moment the courier company tagatod na tag-receive na ni buyer, so waya na labot kung mahitabo pa tong maguba pag-alsa ng buyer, pag-alsa ng buyer, nahuyog, nabuak, waya na labot si seller, no? The point that it was already received by the buyer under FOB destination, waya nilabot si seller kung ano pa mahitabo. But take note again, balikod ko, under FOB shipping point, whatever happens to the goods in transit would no longer be shouldered by the supplier, because the moment that the courier company already receives these goods for delivery to the buyer, waya na liability si seller. But again, as I've said, kung FOB destination, si buyer pa ang may labot kung may mahitabo sa goods in transit kung waya pa ma-receive ni buyer. So whoever is the owner of the goods that are in transit under FOB shipping point or FOB destination should shoulder the transportation cost, no? Jo aton delivery cost ang bot ipasabot, no? Ana dapat ijo i-mind, no? So you have there, when merchandise is shipped by tracking entity or an airline, the carrier prepares a freight bill in accordance with the instructions of the party making the shipping arrangements. The freight bill designates which party shoulders the cost and whether the shipment is freight prepaid or freight collect. So it will complicate things, class, kung dili si kung pala prepaid, tagbayaran daan ni buyer, ni seller, no, prepaid. Buti pasabot before i-ship ni seller, tagbayaran na daan ni bisan ang owner ng goods under transit si buyer na, no, under FOB shipping point. So kung the remedy of course of the seller would add, no? Aton ija tagbayaran na freight sa bayron nun ni buyer. And then kung freight collect, wala, no? No obligation kay si buyer naman dapat ang mag-shoulder. But if it is freight collect, pero FOB destination, no? Freight collect, pero FOB destination, then dapat si buyer minusan ni dyan bayron nun kan seller. Because, di ba remember, kung under FOB shipping point, si buyer na ang tag-ija ng goods in transit. So dapat ang freight cost siya na magbayad. Kung under FOB shipping point, those goods in transit are still owned by the seller until it will be physically received by the buyer. So buti pa sabot, kung si buyer na ang owner, dapat si buyer na mag-shoulder ng cost, no? Ng transportation cost. Pero kung si seller pa ang buyer ng goods in transit, so dapat si seller ang magbayad sa transportation cost. But as I've said, it would complicate things, no? Especially if you mentioned about freight prepaid and freight collect. So I won't touch much here, no? Okay, pag maglisod ka mo. But it is here a summary of everything, no? Kung ang freight terms, kung FOB destination and freight prepaid, who should pay the transportation cost? Si seller, because I said under FOB destination, the goods in transit would only be the ownership would only be transferred to the buyer when the goods are already physically received by the buyer. So kay in transit pa man, kung mahitabo, mag-crash ang plane, maguba ang sakyanan, nag-crash ang sakyanan o nalunod ang barko, then dapat si seller pa ang responsible for the goods in transit. So pay the shipper, dapat si seller. Okay, kay freight prepaid man, no? Dapat man sa gusto mo bayad si seller kay FOB destination man. Then under FOB shipping point, freight collect. So sino may dapat owner in goods in transit? Si buyer na. Collect man. So si may nagbayad? Si buyer kay collect man, no? Kibaliwaya mo bayad daan ng shipping cost si seller kay di pa collect ni Jakan dito kan buyer. So why obligation ni buyer dito kan seller? Only the goods in transit, no? The cost of the goods in transit. And for FOB destination freight collect, amo na dyan, no? Nag-ship si buyer, waya ni siya bayarin na ng freight, kay siya na tagpa-collect. So as I've said, kay seller pa man ang tag-ija, dapat siya may mubayad sa transportation cost, pero ija man tagpa-collect, ija man tagpabayad si buyer, so the remedy of the buyer is deduct the amount of transportation cost to the goods at the amount payable to the buyer, to the seller. So kay dapat lagi under FOB destination, the owner of the goods in transit is still the seller. So buti pa sabot, dapat si seller sa magbayad sa transportation cost. But in this case, tagpa-collect man ni seller kan buyer, so dapat si buyer minusan na ni bayron nun dito kan sellers equivalent to the goods, no? The transportation cost. And then FOB shipping point, diba remember si buyer ng owner, freight prepaid, si seller ang nagbayadaan. Because kung mulang ganito freight prepaid class, kung freight, syempre, ang nagpakarga dyan, si seller. No? Si seller nagpakarga. No? As I've said, depende na kung who owns. Kung si seller nagpakarga, if, for example, in this case, FOB shipping point, si buyer ng owner of the goods in transit, na kay freight prepaid, nagbayaran man ni seller. So ang remedy ko man ni seller, sukton niya si buyer na nandun amount of the goods that are ordered plus the shipping cost. Kaya remember, kung shipping point na dapat si buyer na magbayad, na kay tagbayaran man ni seller, ugsa ang bayron nun ni buyer, dugangan na kan sa shipping cost na nag-accommodate ni seller. Lisod yun sa subdon class, no? But if you can go through with the discussion here in the module, you would be able to understand. So, kung FOB shipping point, Si buyer na an ano pa, shipping point, si buyer and goods, an owner ng goods in transit. So on the books of the buyer, it is transportation in kay pasuyod man sa ija ang goods. Okay? So that is, remember, under the cost of sales, it is an addition to the cost of sales. And then kung mulong kita, under FOB destination, whatever happened to the goods, si buyer, si seller, pagyapon ang owner of the goods. So kasi siya may dapat mo bayad sa transportation cost, it is not part of the asset or of the goods in transit, but it is an expense on the part of the seller. Transportation out. Okay? Transportation out. Under. This is classified as an operating expense. Take note, class. This is an operating expense and transportation out. Whereas a transportation in is an asset or inventory or additional cost to inventory of the buyer. Itong goods na ninyo tagpalit. So ang kantidad mag-include, of course, of the shipping costs. Inventory systems. We have only two inventory systems. The perpetual inventory system and the periodic inventory system. When we say perpetual inventory system, class, it uses tanan tag-record ka dyan ang inventory pagsuyod, pag-out sa stock room, no, tag-record. So plus minus every time that there would be kwaon na inventory from the stock room going out for sale on the sustante, then dapat naka-record yun siya. No? Perpetual, because there is always a record of ins and outs of the inventory. Whereas under periodic inventory system, class, so meaning to say, before I forgot, class, under perpetual inventory system, the inventory, the cost of inventory and sold would be automatically determined kay diyan naman daan mo data. But of course, you have to use the computer system, no, to determine this one automatically. So bisan dili pa, plus minus, pwede rin mo ma-determine pila na dadyo na bilhin. For example, nagpalit ng beer brand na lata, no? For example, whatever size it is. Tagpalit nila na puyo kabuo kila tagpalit. So nasulit sa stockroom na puyo kabuo. Tapos, nahali naman na sa may stante, ito naka-display na mga kuan, na mga beer brand. So tagkuha na sa banton, let's say for example 5 anay, no? 5 ka buok lata tagawas sa para for display even though bisan isa ra kinahanglan for that day. So dapat tag-record sa antag kuha, no, from the stock room. So automatically you would learn at the end of the day after deducting atong tag-outing mo sa stock room kung pila ra ka nabilin na beer brand, di ba? Bisan manual sa class or computerized. Kung manual sa class may bayoran na mo kung pila nabilin. Kung computerized, mas dali hinoon, no? Di na magkinalan plus minus because the system would automatically compute for the balance of the inventory. Okay, so that is about perpetual inventory system. But of course, there would also be a difference in recording later on, no? So we will be having a summary of the difference between how the entries of purchases and the sale of goods, no, are recorded under these two inventory systems, under perpetual and periodic inventory systems. For computerized, as I've said, it would be easier. No? Atong mga dagko na company that uses scanner or it has a point of sale inventory system, mas dali, no? Mas dali ang pag-determine ng inventory. But for those na mga small time, sa mga sari-sari store class, of course, magkakakutikon, maghimo pa sila ng inventory system, no? But dapat ideally, yes, no? Ideally, yes. Pero kung imo na dyan business, tapos ikaw rin mahago, of course, you won't, no? Kung family rin hapon nimo ang magamit, wailain tao ang magbantay sa tindahan, then might as well do not prepare, no? Do not adopt perpetual inventory system. So, for the atong mga sari-sari store, the most convenient inventory system will be the periodic inventory system. That you need to count first kumpilay na bilin to determine the inventory value, no? Kaya na sa perpetual, bisan dito dali ra, no? Because computerized system, computerized system, makita na dapat kumpilay balance on each item under inventory. Pero kung periodic class, dili, not unless you will conduct a physical count. Physical count, kimali nag-ihap. Remember, John, gani class, sa bisan mga SM class, there is always a day for inventory. Joy, mula na close for inventory. It means class, they are conducting physical count, no? Kay lisod man, kung mag-interrupt sila, for example, mag-open sila pagkatapos joy mo gawas, joy mga mahalin, so mag-minus-minus na sab. Na kung hamok mahalin, kakuti, no? Mag-monitor ka ng movement for that inventory, especially kung grocery store, kalisod. Okay na kung mga sakyanan class, no? Kaya bisan periodic inventory system, kung mga sakyanan, kadali ra mo identify. Don't tell me you will be stocking 1 million or 1,000 cars, di ba? Of course, aside from the cost, dili gadyo siya practical na you are going to have it in inventory. Okay, because the space that you're going to have would only be a small space, no? Just to display a few cars that you will be having the inventory. Bisan mga inventory ko tag-tuyo na siguro andyan sa stock sa ila bodega o sa ila warehouse, tag-tuyo, tag-duha no ang available. Dili gadyo kun cars, dili gadyo kun hamok. Pero sa mga retail store class, hamok gadyo. That's why kun kami as I said, mas convenient kun if you will only be using periodic inventory system if it is only a family business, no? But even if you are using the perpetual inventory system, there is still a need for a physical count. Mag-ihap. As I said on SM, no? Mag-close gihapon sila for inventory. Why? Just to check, just to pinpoint the accountability of the custodian of this inventory naka-display kay basin, no? Ang sa libro, nakabutang sa ila computer, napuyo kabuok. Pero ba dya, in actual count, 5 na kakabuk. Then what happened to the 5? Basin tagpangawat na, tagbulsa na ng mga inventory stock. Custodian, di ba? So it is always important, even if you're using perpetual inventory system, you still need to do just like what the periodic inventory system do, the actual physical counting of the inventory to check that all items are of the same balances in actual, no? Okay. So net sales. Dari na ba dyan? How we arrive at net sales? We have the terms gross sales, no? Less sales returns and allowances and sales discount is equals to net sales. Atong kanina diri class, dili ba si net sales automatic na net sales, no? Kay we still have to have the information as to the sales discount and sales returns and allowances. Dari, no? Net sales sa diri. But, no? In the notes of financial statement, you have the details as to how much is the gross sales, how much is the sales returns and allowances, and how much is the discounts. To arrive at the net sales, of course. Okay. Gross sales. Under accrual accounting, revenues from the sale of merchandise are considered to be earned in the accounting period in which the title of goods passes, usually at the point of delivery from the seller to the buyer. Gross sales consist of sales, total sales of cash and on credit. Ideally, class, dito sa notes to financial statement, dapat nakabutang how much is your cash sales and how much is your credit sales. No? Of course, for determining how much is your accounts receivable, of course, balance at the end of the accounting period. Although cash for sale is uncollected, the revenue is recognized as earned at the time of sale. So, bisan utang pa siya sa class, automatic, once bisan tag-utang siya, automatic it is already a gross sales. No? Hali na gano'n siya. As an income account, the sales account is credited whenever sales on account or cash sales are made. Only sales of merchandise held for resale are recorded in the sales account. If a merchandising firm sold one of its delivery trucks, the credit would be made to the delivery equipment account, not to sales account. Ang buti pasabot sa ini class. I would like to emphasize on this one. Kung ang Iza Baligya class is aton mga grocery items, tapos dyan may Iza delivery truck, tapos kay di naman sa ganahan ng delivery truck, gusto ni Jay ibaligya na, remember tindahan si Jay o grocery store si Jay, and then tagbaligya ni Jay sa delivery truck. So, is delivery truck, ang halin sa delivery truck considered as gross sales? No. It is only a deduction to the delivery truck equipment or whatever account that is used to classify the delivery truck. Okay? So, dili si Jay sales, no? But it is a proceeds from sale of delivery truck, other income, no? Classified as other income. Okay. The journal entry to record the sale of merchandise for cash, ito cash, debit to cash, credit to sales. And if it is on credit, debit to cash, instead of debit to cash, it would be a debit to accounts receivable and a credit to sales. And then for the sales discounts, so if for example, J sales discount, for example, utang ng 3,000, so debit to accounts receivable, credit to sales. Subsequent collection would be debit to cash, kuhaanan natin sales discount, and then credit to accounts receivable. Of course, ato man i-close ang accounts. Ang utang na 3,000. Although ang na-receive ka nato is only 2,940 because of the enjoyment of the buyer of the sales discount. Sales returns and allowances, of course, kung mag-uli ka ng mga goods, ikaw si buyer, then later on, iuli kan seller kay siguro nag-uupi na or expired na, you have overlooked over it. Then, these are, kung accepted, if valid reason, acceptable on the part of the seller, then it becomes sales returns and allowances. So simply, debit to sales returns and allowances and credit to accounts receivable. So dapat there should be a credit memorandum, no? Dapat for the accounts to be deducted from the discount, deducted from the accounts receivable account. Transportation out, di ba? Remember lang ako, kung ikaw si buyer, transportation in. Kung ikaw si seller, ikaw dapat magbayad ng freight cost, then that is transportation cost. Transportation out, I mean. So, for example, kung si aton freight prepaid, FOB destination, kay dapat manggadyon mo bayad si kay FOB destination man, dapat si seller mamubayad. So whatever transportation cost should be treated as transportation out. Okay? So kung dyan discount is also shown here. No? So kung magbayad na, kung bayaran na, na-collect na kibali at utang na 3,000 and 17,000, then of course it would that the transportation out would not be part of the account of the buyer. So these are freight collect, no? Come on na, later on na. You read it through, but of course it would not be part of your exam because I know lisod gyud just sabton at this point. No? If you don't go through in details on to understand everything in accounting. Cost of sales, remember on cost again. Cost of sales is the cost of the goods purchased plus all costs incidental to purchase. Okay. So of course, no? Of course, class, this is already merchandising operations that we're discussing. Then new terms are being introduced already, although initially what were already introduced, we have been introduced with sales, gross sales, net sales, sales discounts, sales returns and allowances, transportation out, and transportation in. No, but by in, no, transportation out, because the first part that we have taken for this would be on the part of the seller. Kung natin mga sales, net sales, sales discounts, sales returns and allowances. But here, that even if a merchandising business is also a seller at the same time, but he is also a buyer at the same time. So the new terms would be the merchandise inventory. Remember, there were three types of inventory, if we may recall in chapter 3, that the for trading and merchandising, the inventory is called merchandise inventory. For manufacturing, ano man, three types, no, or four types of inventory. We have the raw materials inventory, the work in process inventory, the finished goods inventory, which is equivalent to merchandise inventory under merchandising or trading, and the finished and the manufacturing supplies inventory or factory supplies inventory. No? So dire, no, dili siya, we did not discuss, we are not to discuss manufacturing, no, kay merchandising naman nato i-discuss. That's why we only have the account merchandise inventory. This is the merchandise inventory beginning. Okay. The computation cost of sales class is very complex. No, it requires this one. No, ini kataas na dun si Jaija. Presentation of the cost of sales. You have the merchandise inventory class. 1-1. Buti po sa this is January 1. Or this is what we call the merchandise inventory beginning. No? Then you add all the purchases or net purchases. You have the gross purchases. No? Purchases atong kantidad na imo goods na tagpalit na para imo ipamaligya. Transportation in aton transportation cost na pagpalit mo sa supplier, ikaw nagbayad ng transportation. Kung si seller ang nagbayad, siya dapat magbayad kay transport FOB destination, then dili wala dapat transportation in, no? But then kung FOB shipping point, ikaw dapat magbayad, si buyer, then it is a transportation in addition to cost of sales. And then total cost of purchase, less purchases, returns, and allowances. So di ba, at the point of view of the buyer, sales, returns, and allowances, also, seller, again, at the point of view of the seller, sales, returns, and allowances, sales discounts also. On the point of view of the buyer, sales, purchases, returns, and allowances, and purchases discounts. Okay? So ang discount on the part of the seller, sales discount. On the part of the buyer, it is purchases discounts. Okay? So you have there purchases, returns, and allowances. At kung tag-return mo the goods, no, na nimo tagpalit, previously na dyan classified as purchases, becomes purchases, returns, and allowances. And on the part of the seller, sales, returns, and allowances. Ang purchases on the part of the buyer are sales on the part of the seller. No? Transportation in sa imo kung aton pagpalit mo ng goods, aton purchases ng goods na mo ibaligya, entails you an additional transportation costs. So net purchases added to the merchandise inventory. So this is now what we call the cost of goods available for sale. Kung ato binisayon class, what is the cost available for sale? Ang kantidad sa imo ipamaligya, no? Aton ang kantidad sa imo ibaligya or the amount that is available for sale. Ang amount, ang kantidad na imo ipamaligya. Ana siya kasimple, no? Then less 12/31/2018 class, that is merchandise inventory and sorry class, nasayat dyan din. Okay, merchandise inventory end. No, why? Kung mula kita merchandise inventory beginning class, amo ini nabilin ang inventory aton una na tuig sa 2017 becomes the beginning of 2018. Inin sa merchandise inventory end na 1231, amo sa bininabilin sa 2018. That will become the merchandise inventory beginning for 2019. No, ana siya. So the cost of goods available for sale, you have the beginning inventory. This is just a illustration of what is here. No? So beginning inventory, net purchases, ending inventory, cost of sales, or cost of goods sold. Cost of sales or cost of goods sold class is the same. No? But you should be consistent. Cost of goods sold, dapat din niya ang title dili kung cost of sales. No? Kung imo gamitong cost of goods sold, dili sa ubos. So I have already discussed at merchandise inventory beginning, about merchandise inventory beginning and merchandise inventory end. So the cost of purchases, it was already illustrated above. So that is how, no? I will be having a comparison later on on how, at the point of view of the buyer, the transaction of a sale transaction at the point of view of the seller, and at the point, the accounting records or accounts to be used at the point of view of the buyer. Purchases discounts, as I've said, at the point of view of the seller, it is just discount. Transportation in, the one that I've said, kung magpalit sila ng goods from the supplier, then the buyer entails additional cost for the transportation cost of the goods para di sir pamabot sa agent, then that's transportation in. I will discuss now to you about value-added tax. No? Importante man gud ang value-added tax because for businesses whose income reaches already 3 million and above, then this business or that business should be subjected to the 12% value-added tax. So it is a tax levied on the sale, barter, exchange, or lease of goods or properties and services in the Philippines and on importation of goods in the Philippines. It is an indirect tax which may be shifted or passed on to the buyer, transferee or lessee of goods, properties, or services. To simplify, it means that a certain tax rate of 0 to 12% is added up to the selling price of the goods or services sold. It is also imposed on imported goods from abroad. Business is not subjected to VAT, are classified as non-VAT businesses to be subjected to quarterly percentage tax. Okay, bali, if the business income does not reach 3 million, then they would only be paying sales taxes for as percentage, quarterly percentage tax. What are the types of VAT and tax rates of 12% usually? No, ato. Zero rated, no? You read on this one, what are type of businesses or what are the nature of business that is subjected to zero rated. But of course, the zero rated class now is not subjected to 12% effective at March, 2021. VAT exempt, there may be VAT exempt, no? Transactions like sale of agricultural products, no? In mga tuition fees, lending activities, real properties, books, transportation, etc., are not subjected to VAT. Or required to file VAT returns, aton lagi whose gross receipts has 3 million and above. Monthly VAT declaration, the BIR form 25510M. So these are instructions or procedures how to fill up the form. Quarterly, aside from monthly, kung VAT class, there would always be a quarterly value-added tax summarizes that the 3 months of the quarter in a return. No? So again, you're given instructions how to prepare the form. What is the tax relief? Aton, there will be a deduction on the part of your VAT output on the sales, which is 12%, that you would now be deducted with a certain deductions because of the expenses that you have also, as a VAT business, that you have expenses that are also VATable businesses. Kibali, dito ka nagpalit ng ang resibo ng imo tagpalitan VATable sum. These are what we call input taxes. They are VAT relief. So, as two components, the output VAT on the part of the seller, it is an output VAT at 12% from gross. Then input VAT are levied on the seller's purchases on the goods na ila sa bibaligya or the expenses, ordinary pagpalit ng mga materials, equipment, which are also has VAT components, then they would be classified as input taxes. So this is an example of a receipt that is subject to VAT. If you notice, how do we compute for that? So, anira siya, I have here how to compute for the VAT. So, this is my own explanation. There is no book, that is derived from here. This is an actual experience that I did as a bookkeeper. So, you have there, for example, aton halin is 1694, Halin, inclusive na dyan ng VAT. So, dapat VATable, how did we do? I-divide nimo by 1.12 to arrive at the gross sales, which is, the VATable sales is only 1.580. Okay. So, output VAT is only 181. Tag-uno man, 12% of 1,512.50 is 181. Tag-uno man sa nato pagkuha doon, 1694 minus 151,250 is equals to 181. So, ang bayaran ng business na naton VATable business, output VAT minus input VAT is equals to VAT payable. Amo na dyan sa bayaran. So, kung masamok sa VAT na resibo, basta kay valid within the business operations, then pwede dyan sa maway bayro nun. But of course, siguro for a certain period, pwede way bayro nun. But for a later period, dyan na gadyoy mababayaran. So, value-added tax entries, I have also here. It's up to you to read. So, these are the actual entries that I record, based on the above, o di ba dyan? Sample, that I also have here. Operating expenses. So, we have the periodic and perpetual inventory systems are now explained. I have the video here for you, for your reference, So, please, I have the problem here. Subsequent to this would be the problem. Example problem for merchandising business. So here, kung nahalinan on the periodic inventory system, debit to on account, debit to accounts receivable, credit to sales. Pero kung perpetual inventory system plus, duha ka set of entries and ma-record. Debit to, the same as a periodic, debit to accounts receivable and credit to sales. But there will now be an additional entry to debit to cost of sales, credit to merchandise, inventory. Sales returns, Jare is an additional entry, Tag-reversing the entry that was for sale. Kita nag-uli man, Cash discounts, Jare sub, if there is. So actually no difference, under perpetual and periodic inventory system. Look class, kung transportation in, the account title used is merchandise inventory for perpetual, dili na kung transportation in, And then if there is purchases, there are purchases returns, debit to accounts payable, credit to merchandise inventory. But of course, kaya di ba pagpalit nimo, maka nagpalit, dire nag-purchase ko, nag-debit ka ng merchandise inventory, credit to accounts payable. But of course, kung nag-uli man ka, di dapat imo i-reverse ang imo merchandise inventory minus ang imo. Okay, ana siya, no? That's for the first part of Module 5, no? Thank you for listening.